Hi everyone, this is the last of the review videos for Unit 4 Grammar. This is all about dashes. Dashes can be used to set off a major interruption within a sentence. And so that major interruption is sometimes a complete sentence that interrupts another sentence. Sometimes it's a long list of things, but it's a major interrupter. Dashes will behave like commas when we're using them to set off major interrupters. Sometimes we use a dash to set off a summary or explanation that follows a list. And in this way, the dashes are behaving like a colon. Use dashes sparingly, and they do chop up your writing, and then they can damage the coherence of a composition. Not just coherence, which is like the flow of the composition, but also the clarity. It can interrupt the meaning of what it is you're trying to say. Emily Dickinson is a poet who used dashes all the time, and she can get away with it. She did get away with it because it was poetry, and she used them to show where she wants people to pause in their reading of her work. But when we are using dashes in narrative writing and prose writing, we want to use them very sparingly. I find that I use dashes a lot in texting, in Snapchatting, and sometimes too in emails. It's a bad habit I've gotten into, so I'm trying to make sure that when I type things, particularly in emails, that I'm using dashes correctly. So here are some examples. This is all from page 19 in our grammar book. Dashes are used for major interrupters. We have 3 examples here. My father, dash, and it is hard to blame him given the poverty in which he grew up, dash, grows very angry if he feels that someone is denigrating the poor. This is a correct way to use the dashes. It does create a major interrupter in the sentence of my father grows very angry if he feels that someone is denigrating the poor. Denigrate means to speak badly about. I think stylistically I probably would have maybe put this interrupter in a sentence after, or maybe a parenthetical part of the sentence after the first part of the sentence. Maybe would have found a better way to do it than having it be an interrupter, but grammatically this is correct. Stylistically it creates chop, but it works. My uncle, I strongly suspected, knew nothing about remodeling houses. So even though it doesn't sound like it, that is a complete sentence. I strongly suspected. And it's a complete sentence interrupting another sentence. And it's showing how the sentence, my uncle knew nothing about remodeling houses, is a personal assessment as opposed to point of fact. And then lastly, we have dashes that are setting off a list of things in the middle of a sentence. Things I used to be good at, crossword puzzles, trivia games, and chess, became exercises in frustration after my head injury. Okay, so things I used to be good at became exercises in frustration. That's the original sentence, but then that list is put in with dashes to kind of give further explanation about things, what things. And you know that if you use the word things in your essay, Hellman highlighted it and said, things, what things? Don't use the word things. It has no meaning. So this dashed interrupter is kind of a nice way to make sure that things has meaning for that sentence. The second way that we can use dashes is using them to set off a summary or explanation after a list. And so we have 2 examples here. Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes, dash. These are all German auto companies. And then we have a list of names, dash. They all objected to Mark's engagement to Clarissa. Okay. Notice that when we are interrupting a sentence, we are using 2 dashes. Just like we would use 2 commas to show that that piece of information could be lifted out and thrown away. When you're using it to set off a list and an explanation that comes after a list, you only use one dash. All right, that's dashes. Hope you guys are having a good Monday.